It is soon going to be 8 months since Russia first invaded Ukraine. Since then, many lives have been lost, thousands of houses have been burnt down. There are no signs of Russia backing up or Ukraine surrendering.
This is the time while you can prepare the temporary solution. It doesn't matter how you've been relocated, to have some time to wait until the government will fix your houses. You need to take this time with dignity. The key thing, it's not just a living space, it's a system of living. It's not only the personal space, it's the shared space, it's the place where can you work, where you can get new knowledge.
And it's rebuilding the community connections that you had.
That's it. You need to socialize. It's not just you lost your home. It's much more stress. So we need to recover the stress somehow. So this is what aspects we're trying to cover with this project.
Like, you're not just an architect, you're also on the front lines. You are volunteering on evacuation with people that are being displaced during the war.
As a civilian, as a Ukrainian, I can't just stand aside. Now on in Ukraine, we are living today's life. We don't know what will be next week. We don't know where this war will end. People can't prognose their life for a week. We can just believe in a better future, but we need to keep moving. This type of project give us a possibility just to hope that someday we'll fix it. We will use it in this way. Let's try it. I'm Slava Balbek. I'm an architect from Kyiv, Ukraine. I'm running up the bureau called Balbek Bureau. Mostly we work with the interior design. We have pretty wide coverage. We've done some projects in San Francisco, in China. First years we were working only on a residential side. It was the interior design of apartments and homes. And afterwards we switched to the restaurants and bars. 3 years in a row we've been 10 best European bars with our projects. And then it was hotels and offices and art exhibitions. And anytime when we have the project internationally, we work as a conceptual team. So we don't need to have a license in any country. In California, we do have partners who participate with us as a team. And we contact every time local architects taking part the coding, the licenses and the engineering stuff. And we are continuing as the conceptual ones and making the authority control of the drawings and the realization of the projects.
You're really thinking about, from the very beginning of your career, like the inside of spaces, these kind of award-winning bars, restaurants, social spaces.
Yeah, this is right. This background with the residential area gives us a low pace to be well-detailed architects. And then the other thing that while you're working in Ukraine, so the craftsmanship here, everything that you can't buy, you can produce in Ukraine, and it's pretty cheap. So we didn't need to buy a couch, we didn't need to buy a chair, so we can draw it by ourselves and produce this. And we have an experience to produce from scratch the elements that we are making the design. It's unique for each project. All the railings, tables, all this advertising, bar stands, all the couches, the podiums, these freestanding arcs, they were produced in Kyiv or Ukraine.
I would love to just learn a little more about your background and then transition it to your current personal life as well during this trying time in Ukraine before we go into the more innovation side of things around your housing design.
I'm an architect profession. I've been practicing for 15 years. I'm born in Kyiv. I'm studying architecture in Kyiv, Ukrainian University of Construction and Architecture. And after I graduated the university, I just started my own practice with my colleague bureau. And our company is 65 people working in Balbek Bureau. The slide explains how team will relocate themselves after the 24th of February. Now on, only 10% of them are situated in Kyiv.
Some are internally displaced, others are internationally displaced.
Yeah, exactly.
And before we dive into your temporary housing solution, I just wanted to address the elephant in the room that the war in Ukraine is still going on as of the recording of this. As a personal background, like, you're not just an architect, you're also on the front lines. You are an evacuation driver?
Yeah. I'm helping as a volunteer here.
Volunteering on evacuation with people that are being displaced during the war.
Ukrainian positions and then the Russian troops, and then there's a gray area in between them. It's a kilometer, sometimes it's a few kilometers, sometimes it's 500 meters where there's nothing going on. So, and few villages, actually a bunch of them are situated there. So volunteers has the list of the families which need to be displaced from that point, and they can't do it by themselves because, for example, the weather conditions, or they just under the shelling like daily. He had been shelling daily for the past 7 months. Sometimes I just join them. It's not my regular stuff. This is something that I was doing here in Kyiv, parallel with my architectural practice. I'm also a drone pilot, so I'm doing the intelligence service on the other directions. So I'm signing a contract with the militaries.
How do you balance that time, be an architect, with also doing this other work?
Yeah, we call this war-life balance.
War-life balance?
Yeah. Normally it is like work-life balance,
Yeah.
but here in Ukraine we call this war-life balance because you should participate somehow, because as a civilian, as the Ukrainian, I can't just stand aside, and we actually volunteered from the first days, and it's in different directions, in different ways. So for example, we were preparing dishes on the first days, we was evacuating people there, and then we were food delivery. It's a parallel. So because if you will focus on something like architecture, you'll be switch yourself to be accurate and effective in both of them. So for me, I just find myself somehow, switching mentally and physically. So physically, I was like I'm driving a car, carrying heavy stuff, and mentally, I'm just working with my architectural team as a volunteer architect.
Well, it's truly amazing what you're doing. I guess now I'd love to kind of shift gears and focus on this temporary housing solution that you and your team have been working on implementing over the past several months since the outbreak of the war in Ukraine. So I'd just love to get a quick background on that and what you're trying to achieve. I guess the idea is something will be built because people need to come back, and out of necessity, if you don't plan ahead with some thoughtful design preparation, then it could just be a sort of a major detriment and loss of sense of community.
Yeah, we need to decide where it can be helpful. We develop temporary solutions. This is the temporary system of living. We took this as the vector of developing projects. All our solutions and our system of solutions is based on temporary decision, which can be or reused somehow afterwards, or implemented in a higher level. We've been covered pretty widely by the world. The Forbes, Bloomberg, Spiegel, CNN wrote about us. We released this project in April. We've been showing this to President Zelenskyy. We continue working with the local governments. This is the time while you can prepare the temporary solution, the big idea of this project. It doesn't matter how you've been relocated. If you need to have some time to wait until the government will fix your houses or repair it, you need to take this time with dignity. The key thing, it's not just a living space, it's a system of living. It's not only the personal space, it's the shared space, it's the place where can you work, where you can get new knowledge. You need to socialize. So it's not just you lost your home. You need to think about the mental health of people who was relocated, who is under the stress, their country under the war, so the house is destroyed. So not just losing the space where you was living.
It's not just rebuilding a shelter over your head, it's rebuilding the community connections that you had.
That's it. We're trying to go from the standard minimal principle to the minimal comfort. What's the difference? So we are not trying to hit the highest capacities. So if you have a site, so world practice says that you can put the barracks or you put the housing like one side to another, and you have the housing and outdoors. And we're trying to think that you need to have some space just to shared spaces, the common spaces, the place where you can work. We are taking a little bit less of the capacity and give this to comfort level. It's not only about living areas or living block. It's much more to develop the codes, norms for the restrooms and bars, bathrooms, and kitchens. So many shared spaces there. We increase the size of the corridors. We just make it as maximum comfort as we can. So you just feel free to use it. You don't need to be either in your private space, either outdoors. Normally the refugee camps build it like this principle, so you can be inside your slot or you can go outdoors and go away. We think that you can be inside the house and feel free to use the shared spaces, shared kitchens, and etc. This is the interior visualization. Simple and nice, warm colors, light ones, look like a lobby of some super simple hotel, but you can feel free to use it as you want. And it's really important to make it as maximum comfort as we can, because people should be recovering. You're losing something that you need to fill it up with other emotions. While in this, they living a temporary housing, you can prepare some permanent solution. Either you can repair the destroyed houses, so you have some time to be a little bit more preparations, and then people can be there a bit more time, for example 3 months or up to 1 year. It's a modular system, so you can build up, you can multiply this, you can adjust it to different configuration of the site. We're trying to use the local resources, and the project has different ways to use it, to reuse it afterwards. So you can relocate it easily, you can use it as the different function after you fix the problem of the displaced people, for example, as a rehabilitation center, military housing. You are not building it for once. You're building this to use it, reuse it, or relocate it to use it other directions.
The method of construction here is sort of a type 5, like sort of traditional site-built wood frame.
Yeah, it's a traditional one, something about $650 per square meter.
So that's like $65 a square foot.
To build it up from zero level with the furnishing in Ukraine. So it's pretty cheap one. It's a wood structure framing. It is in the concrete, and you don't have any of ecological leftovers while you take it away. Facade finishing is an aluminum panels. We are trying to achieve the price range, so that's why we came up with this. It should be a cheap decision and fast decision. You can build it on the winter. You can't paint the facade. You can make some kind of something that will freeze on winters. Just it should be the same. The window, the framing, the facades, all the construction elements should be the 100% the same. So that's how we can show methodology and how we build it or rebuild it somewhere.
The material you're using for this facade that you would envision being kind of copied over and over again is a readily available material that you're not using any kind of specialty finish.
Yeah, sometimes it's really hard to make the expectation in Ukraine, because you never know what's going to be tomorrow. So you can't prognose here. This is the sample of the sections. We have 2 different types. As a communal living, while we have the private space and common spaces, and other section, it's a small flats. So it's blocked flats with your private kitchen, private dinery, private living rooms. It's 2 different sections, and all master plan is built up from this combination of this different section. We have 8 different configuration, but typology is just built up on 2 basic, the communal ones and basics on the apartments type.
Moving from this conceptual master plan to your first pilot project, I'd love just to discuss the details of this. It's a $1 million fundraise to build housing for 15 families outside of Kyiv in the region of Bucha.
As the company, we're trying to fundraise the fees to build up the pilot project beside Kyiv in the Bucha district. It's about building the sample of 2 different sections and to show by the real models how it will be 2 different residential sections, have the communal 2 floors section and 1 floor apartment type. There would be 15 families living there, and our goal is to show the principle of comfort living. The people will live there for a year, and we have the group of people get the feedback from them. We'll work with the psychologists there. How are they using, how they're building the community, how they use all of this. So this is really important to get the feedback to implement this project in a bigger scale. We thought that it should be beside the Bucha. The world know about the Bucha, what's happening there. This is massive tragedy. And we have a good connection to the mayor of Bucha, so this is the place where we would like to use the pilot ones, because the Bucha, Irpin, and other cities they were shelled, they were occupied in a row. So it's actually beside the Kyiv. It's like a 30 minutes drive, because the government can go there. And actually, all the investors can go there to see what's going on there. It's a communal land from the Bucha government. and we signed it memorandum that we use it for a year after we will finish the construction, and then we will all this architecture on the space, they will be transferred to Bucha government. I think it should be like a part of the city. It doesn't matter it's a side or it's something in the middle, because it's complicated infrastructure.
It would be a great community asset to have flexible housing space for vulnerable communities as a permanent use.
Trying to fit it up with all facilities which will be there, so that people who is visiting there, the government level, they can see anything that will be implemented in the other projects. So we build the playground, we build up a sport camp here, we have some experimental yard. So this is the best way to show this, but with the same material what we use on a bigger scale. We have here the experimental yard. We will produce here 3 different technology of the buildings. So while you will be here, you can have a place where will be the samples of the room. Half of this building, 1 floor, it's an office part, 1 floor, communal co-working space.
Yeah.
So the capacity of this 2 sections can be twice bigger, so 30 or like 35 families. Just as experiment, it's lower than its normal ones.
You have different populations living there. You have single people living there. You have families living there. You have older people living there. You have younger people living there.
Every family is unique and it has unique style of life. So they need to have some basics and backgrounds to recover this comfortable, to wait for a year, for 2 years.
What were some of the principles that you're pulling out of the use cases from prior transitional shelters?
Looking through the master plan principles, sometimes, as you can see, the facades distance, it's too low, it should be wider. What's the principles of making the communal spaces like it is either the Switzerland, the Germany, or this is the perfect example. Super one, I like it, yeah. I like that they have the courtyard, they have the exterior space to use. It's like a small apartment, so it's 2 floors. It's not like a standard house by house. It doesn't look like a refugee camp. And this is the Ukrainian experience. It's not something where I want to live. This is the emergency decision which became permanent. It's from 2014. There are 8 of them, but we highlighted 5. They're pretty much the same. For me, it doesn't look like a dignity life. This is the point that why we're trying to go from this to our solution.
In your ideal world, when does this pilot project have its ribbon cutting moment?
I hope that we will start construction in the next months. It was the prognosis that in 3 months we will build it up. Next year, spring, the people will live there. So for this, we are trying to fundraise the fees to build it up. We need $1 million to finish this. For now, we have only 25%, but it gives us possibility to start the construction. And I think in the next month we will start it, but we need to continue fundraising to finish it as it is.
Great. Well, best of luck. Hopefully sharing this message also bolsters some support out there. Work, I guess, is gone down during this period too.
Our company is 65 people working in Balbek Bureau. In Ukraine, it's just downcrease. First days in February, we had 40 projects in a row. After the first days and the first weeks, it was only 4 of them. But since the first days, since the February, it's went a little bit up. On the March and April and June, we came up with these social initiatives. And actually the world responds. So we have requests from the international companies, international objects. So we doing the project in Mexico, we making the interior design there in the hotel. So we are continue working in States. Oh, wow. So actually it's different.
If people have lost their homes, are people reaching out to architects now to be like, hey, I want to start rebuilding? Or are people holding off until, I guess, there's more of like a resolution?
They continue waiting. So mostly all the project that we have right now in Ukraine, it's commercial ones. Western part of Ukraine, because it's more or less the safe. There is no place in Ukraine which haven't been shelled, but the Lviv region, it's more or less safe. People travel that way, and the restaurants and offices, they just relocate themselves there. So we have some project there in a row in the western part of Ukraine. Now on in Ukraine, we are living today's life. So we don't know what will be in next week. We don't know where this war will end. People can't prognose their life for a week. And this is a new experience for us. So we can just believe in a better future. But we need to keep moving. This type of project give us a possibility just to hope that someday we'll fix it. We will use it in this way. Let's try it.
Well, Slava, I appreciate the presentation. This is great. So thank you so much for your time, especially given the circumstances, and stay safe out there.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for helping this with this. Yeah.
All right.
Take care. Super.